You're listening to ABC Radio, Melbourne and Victoria.
And it's time once again for me to confront my great shortcomings as a person. This is like we could call this a regular segment called My Great Shortcomings as a Person, and the person who desperately tries to teach me how to overcome them. Because the last time Sam Trattles was in, that's exactly what we did in terms of the art of negotiation, and we're doing it again tonight because tonight we're talking about negotiating as a consumer. That is, as a consumer of services, as a consumer of, be it internet provision, be it phone service, be it energy service, the ability to be able to talk to your provider and negotiate some kind of a better deal for yourself is no doubt one of the most valuable and useful skills that you can have in your tool bag. And I manifestly do not have it. Fortunately, negotiation and business coach, author of I Love Negotiating and Negotiating Your Worth, Sam Trattles is on hand. Sam, good evening and welcome to Evenings.
Hi, Casey. Thank you for having me. It's so great to hear your voice again. Well, and I hope since I spoke to you last time, you feel a bit more confident negotiating some stuff.
No, none of it stuck, Sam. None of it stuck because the moment I went to sort of go, all right, now I'm going to execute my negotiation skills, I went, oh, but really, should I? Where's Sam? Have I got Sam on the phone? No, I tried to fake having Sam on the phone. Talking to, trying to get out of paying my overdue book fees at the library. Yeah, well, this person I have on the phone, and they didn't buy it at all because clearly the phone was beeping, in a way that indicated that no one was on the line anyway. Sam Trattles, it is a delight to have you back on Evenings. We're talking about negotiating as a consumer. Now, a lot of folks must find this a source of some trepidation.
Absolutely. And the trouble we're having at the moment is everyone is saying, yep, check your budget, check what's hitting your hip pocket every month, and have those conversations with your suppliers, as a consumer. And the challenge I find is a lot of people just don't know how to have those conversations. What's the first thing to say? What's the first step to take? So, yeah, I think that a lot of people feel exactly the same way. And I really want people to feel more comfortable to have those conversations and make a difference to their personal budget.
I guess the first step is in sort of getting the motivation to actually have the conversation, because a lot of folks will feel like, oh, we're kind of, we're just a tiny little cog in the machine and we can't expect to improve our standing because we're just one sort of small, drop of sand in the bucket. What can we do? Why is our word going to make a difference?
Well, I think the sand's better off in your bucket than their bucket, for starters. So, I think there's three parts to it. And the first one is, as you say, prepare for that conversation and really sit back and go, okay, yep, it's uncomfortable and it's daunting, but don't I deserve that? And then have the conversation from there. So once you start to convince yourself that you're worth it, that it's worth having an uncomfortable conversation, then it's about going, okay, well, what's the first step is about preparation for that conversation.
I guess
taking that.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, I guess in any context like that, if you're sort of thinking that you're worth nothing in the equation, then I guess the corollary to that becomes, well, if you're worth nothing, then if you take your nothing somewhere else, it shouldn't make any difference to that provider. Oh, it does make a difference. Clearly, you're not worth nothing.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and it's just those 1 minute of your uncomfort, and then the equivalent 1 minute of my the consternation, if that's the right word, that you are worth it, and it is this one conversation, and to find out whether that person values the dollar that you put in their pocket every month. Mind you, it's more than $1 most people take from you. So
yeah, I was going to say,
really
what electricity company are you with, Sam? Because that sounds pretty good. That either sounds pretty good, or you're watching, 30 seconds of television each month, and
yeah, that's right. Well, the bank's taking the rest, so.
So all right, that's the first step. Just sort of brace yourself in a way and say and back yourself.
Back yourself and then go and do what you need to do to prepare for the conversation. So that could be going and finding comparison websites. Pull out your bill, try and understand your plan, which is really damn hard a lot of the time because they make it as confusing and as incomparable as possible. But, there's websites that can help. Choice has great websites, CanStar, even government departments, for electricity. There's the energy, I think it's called energymadeeasy.gov.au. So there's lots of comparison websites, not the ones that want your data, the ones that give you the information because they're trying to share that information with you, and then get educated on what's possible out there, so that you can be ready for the actual making the ask when you make the call.
All right. In this hypothetical example, Sam, I'm educated. I have read through my books, and I've visited the website, and I've said, okay. Yes, I've done the maths that says, for the first 3,200 kilowatts, you will be paying 0.62 if you are facing west on a Thursday night. I've worked it all out because with those websites, as you say, they have a way of simplifying some of that stuff down to a better level. I'm ready to have the conversation. I just don't know how I'm going to approach it. I'm scared of confrontation. And I'm socially conditioned to smooth things over and be pleasant. So if the person says no, I'm going to say, oh, well, fair enough. I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah. So taking the time in that preparation as well to write down some notes. So what are you going to say, and what will you say when they say, oh, not really, or something like that. So it's really important to empower yourself that, oh, I'm going to have an uncomfortable conversation. Now, we are scared of confrontation, and I'll pick up on that because they're not going to start yelling at you. Like, to me, confrontation is people yelling. So, there's a conversation to be had here. But yes, definitely need to take a deep breath in before you dial a number and be clear about what's the first thing that you're going to say. Even practicing saying, hi, here's my account number, and I want to talk about blah. So I think it's really important to make it so that you're as comfortable as you possibly can be whilst trying not to hold your breath so that you are ready to make the ask.
Is there a degree to which preparing in that way can lead some folks to sort of over game the situation? That is, to sort of prepare overly aggressively so that they go into the conversation sort of all, with all guns blazing and a bit too on the front foot?
Yeah, great pickup. Yes, absolutely. There's two kinds of people, generally speaking. There's people who wing it, and then there's people who like to orchestrate things. And I think there's a place in the middle, which is that perfect pendulum. So winging it means that you're ill-prepared. You've got to think on your feet. It's really hard to be creative. And excuse me. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you're expecting, I'll say this, and then they'll say that. So you need to be flexibly prepared, if that's for want of a better term, so that you don't get rattled too easily when you're actually on the call.
So you have things to fall back on, or strategies or things you might say if they say a certain thing, but you're not sort of locked into them saying it and then getting angry when they don't say it or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And it's about that fluidity. Humans are humans. They will not do exactly what we expect them to do in the order that we expect them to do them in. So we need to satisfy ourselves that, okay, that's probably what's going to happen. So what will I do then? And you can have 5 different notes. If they say this, then I'll say that. If they'll say that, but it's just not in that exact order that they will ask or say those things. And
it's that notion of, as you say, mapping it out with different responses so that would you suggest that you say, if they offer me X per kilowatt hour or whatever it is, let's say it's an energy company, X dollars per kilowatt hour or whatever they measure those things in, then that will be okay. If they offer X plus 2, that will be great. If they offer X minus 2, that's when I say, no, you've got to do better than that, or whatever.
Yeah, and look, I think it's even taking it up a level. Like, I think the first part of the conversation is hey, I'm thinking about changing providers because I'm hearing that, there's better deals out there. But before I do that, I want to see if you can do anything on the rates. So on the rates that we're currently being charged. And I think the next response, it's typically in any situation, the next response is either yes, no, or maybe. And so that's when it's, it's as high level as that, because if you get down to that tiny granular level, it gets a bit challenging. So we want to go, hang on, I just want to know, first of all, if you will be open to talking about a different rate, because if they say yes, no, or maybe, then that's the next stage as to what happens next and what is that rate change.
The ground is open for negotiation, but if the ground isn't open for negotiation, you're going to waste a lot of time trying to dig further when they say no, we said we're not going to change. No, it's still no.
That's right. They want to keep your grain of sand in their bucket, and then you go, well, actually, is this somebody I want to stay with? If I have to have push them really hard on the rate, is this the right place for me to spend my money?
It's quite canny, that strategy that you suggest of beginning with the notion of I'm contemplating changing providers, because it immediately says, I that's not a movement that I'm going to have to make into the camp of changing away from you. I'm already there thinking about the possibility of changing away from you. What can you do to keep me here?
That's right. Yeah. They haven't rung you to say, hey, are you happy with our rates?
Yeah.
You're making the effort to call them, and you've done the research. And the chances are, if the answer is no to this, then you're going to go and change providers. I think a lot of the time in history, providers have made it sound like it's really hard to change banks. It's really hard to change providers for this, and this. It's actually very easy, because the new provider will do a lot of the work for you. So we need to dispel that myth for people that that's been extremely well done by the banking industry, that it is challenging and upsetting and very difficult. Yes, it can take up time, but it's really not that hard to change.
All right, so I'm going into the conversation and I say I'm looking for let's say it's internet provision, which is, I think, one that I think a lot of folks find themselves negotiating for better rates or negotiating for refresh of those rates, because they just sort of get grandfathered into plans that go for many years past what they should as a due date. And in many of these situations, I think specifically of phone and internet providers, because a lot of phone companies, I think, let folks stay on plans that were far more expensive than the technology had become. Is that something that it's useful to? I hesitate to say weaponize, because I know that's sort of an overly aggressive way to approach the conversation. But is that something that is worth mentioning as negotiation?
Absolutely, and it's something that you have in your kit bag of, here's the evidence of why I want you to consider it. And if you've got a great provider, I remember a couple of years ago I went through this same process, and the telco I was with said, you are on a really good grandfather deal here. You should probably just say, see you later. And I was really grateful for that, and I stayed with them. And whether it probably made me a little bit loyal to them, because the person on the phone, went through the process. And I think the thing is, because they have all these complicated plans and it's hard to compare, the question is, if it's a yes or a maybe, or if it's a yes, the question should be, well, how much do you think you can save me per month? So that it's on a level that I can understand. They can tell you it's gigabytes and it's data and it's these and blah, blah, blah. But I just want to know at the end of the day, what are you going to save me?
I think a similar thing can happen sort of in reverse with some providers. There's one provider that I've had the experience with, and I know an associate of Ben's super producer has had the same experience with, which is that you go to change the plan. All right, move me onto the modern plan, and they look at the modern plans and go, your old plan's better and we can't match it. If we move you into the modern sphere, you're going to lose that thing. So we would just like to quietly recommend you stay with the old plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't know until you ask. And that's the beauty of this process. It's so simple. All I'm going and doing is asking a few questions to see whether I'm valued, to see whether they actually do have my best interest as a customer at heart. It's nice when businesses do that for you, that you do repay them and you do hang up quietly and just go, oh, well. And what I love the most is that I'm sure Ben walked away going, well, I feel very proud of myself, and also my hip pocket knows, okay, that that money that's going out every month, that's what I should be paying. And I think that's the difference, is now going through all the bills we pay every month, making these phone calls and having these short conversations will get the answer, which will empower us, which means at the barbecue on Saturday, it's like, I know I'm paying the right amount.
And I think often we sort of imagine that if we're going to have that kind of conversation, I certainly do, that I'm going to have that conversation and ring up and I'm going to be talking to big, let's say, telecommunications, big telco. I'm going to be talking to this evil corporate company who wants to extract every dollar from me. And yet a lot of the time when I do that phone call, I'm talking to, Trevor, who just works at the local, big telco company call center and the thing. And he's actually not that invested in the drain every last dollar from me. He's more invested in the how can I help you today?
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine working in a call centre, you would get some interesting folks on the phone every day. They don't go to work to upset people. It is a process. I find sometimes the process is frustrating. So whenever I do get frustrated, I make sure that I blame the process, or I point out, do you realise that this process doesn't work for real human beings? Rather than say, do you realise that this is stupid and, very accusatory, like you're getting annoyed at process, not at the person. And then that becomes a conversation around that. Or is there part of the process that allows it to be escalated to a manager? So, it's not about you and me arguing. It's about, I'm annoyed with this process. What can you do about that?
Well, and also, that opens the avenues for it to become you and me in chatting together about this process, doesn't it? Like you and me can be victorious over the process, which is not good.
Yeah, we solve it together, and rather than we are adversaries in this thing, because they're just doing their job at the end of the day, and you're allowed to be annoyed at that job, that process of their job.
Susan from Hurstbridge says, I get a 3 monthly bill which I pay before time. Only way to get a cheaper deal is to give your bank account details so they can take the money monthly. Most do this. Not interested particularly with the current incursions into data. That's a fair enough distinction to make there, Susan. I must confess that a lot of those things I've just sort of gone all in on. Yeah, all right, take it out monthly. And I'm just sort of trusting that that information won't fall into nefarious hands, which is interesting because one of the providers that I do use is a telecommunications company that might have been in a bit of trouble in that regard. Sorry, I sounded like Tucker Bag there for a moment. In no way was I talking about Tucker Bag.
It definitely is a time to think about what's the cost of giving away our data, and who are we doing that to? And that's why I say don't look at those comparison sites, because that's the cost. That the cost of getting that information is not free. The cost is your data. So who do you want to gift that to? But again, coming back to having the conversations with your providers, you're talking directly to them and you're asking them, what can you do for me? And then you're getting the answers to whether they value you. But you might take that opportunity to ask them about their data storage and what do they have on file for you. I don't know what the questions are we're allowed to ask, but might as well ask them to see, do they have to keep those things on files? There's lots of conversations going on with many businesses across this country. And as a consumer, we need to know what they are keeping and what we can ask them to not keep anymore.
Do you think there's any way in which an incursion to data like the one seen recently forms the basis of a negotiation tactic, or is that simply something that the folks in question would just say, look, that's so far outside my pay grade, dealing with potential cyber incursions, that it's really not something I can address in terms of the price I can offer you?
Oh, I think it's absolutely something to be raising as an issue. I mean, but we have to have some empathy for these businesses, that it's not their fault. A bad person or a bad, group of people have come and breached their front door. They've basically ram-raided their shop. So we do have to have some patience, but absolutely it is a reason to have that conversation and say, look, I'm not feeling very comfortable right now. What can you do, for compensation, or what can we look at? So I would imagine there wouldn't be a company that's not experiencing a data breach that would not be open to a conversation like that. I think that'd be very empathetic both ways.
Well, Sam Trattles, once again, you have equipped me You have outfitted me with the tools that I need to bring a better future to myself, my loved ones, and my bank account. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on Evenings.
Thanks, Casey. Good luck.